Clara had always been fascinated by the unknown. As an explorer of distant planets, she thrived on the thrill of discovering things no one had ever seen before. Today, she found herself on the barren, forgotten world of Thalorian 7. The planet was older than most, its surface marked by craters and ruins of a civilization long past. The air was thick with dust, and the sky, though bright, had an eerie, muted glow. Clara's boots crunched on the cracked ground as she walked carefully through the ancient city. She had been following the coordinates from an old, encrypted map she had found on her last adventure. It had led her here, to this desolate place. She was used to the quiet solitude of exploring uncharted worlds, but something about this place felt different, almost alive. As she wandered deeper into the ruins, Clara noticed something unusual. Amidst the broken stone structures and toppled statues, there was a strange glow coming from the center of a large, circular building. It was faint at first, like a flicker of light in the distance. Curious, she quickened her pace, pushing past debris and overgrown vines until she stood before a giant stone archway. The glow was coming from a small, intricate pedestal in the center of the room. On it sat a relic, glowing faintly blue, with strange markings that seemed to shimmer and shift as if they were alive. Clara's heart raced. She had stumbled across many artifacts during her travels, but nothing like this. She stepped closer, reaching out instinctively to touch the object. As her fingers brushed against the surface, a sudden pulse of energy surged through her, and the entire room seemed to tremble. The air grew heavy, and the light intensified, blinding her for a moment. She stumbled back, her breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide in shock. Before she could react further, the light exploded outward in a brilliant flash, and standing before her, in the center of the room, was a figure, a man. He appeared to be made of pure energy, his form flickering and shifting like a mirage, but his eyes were solid, glowing with an ancient, otherworldly knowledge. He looked at her, a small smile curling his lips. "You've done it," the figure said, his voice booming, and yet calm, like the echo of 1,000 voices. "You've freed me." Clara blinked in disbelief, her mind racing. She looked around, but there was no sign of the glowing relic. The figure before her was now solid, his presence filling the room. He was tall, dressed in robes that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal light. His features were sharp, almost regal. But his eyes, those deep, glowing eyes, spoke of ages beyond understanding. "Who are you?" Clara finally asked, her voice shaky but steady. "I am a genie," the figure replied, his smile widening. "A being trapped within this relic for millennia. But now you have set me free." Clara's brow furrowed. A genie? She had heard legends of such creatures, powerful beings capable of granting wishes, but she had always thought them to be just stories. A myth. The genie's smile softened, as if he could read her thoughts. "I am real, yes. And now, I owe you a great debt." He stepped forward, his presence overwhelming yet oddly comforting. "You have freed me from my prison, and as a reward, I shall grant you 3 wishes." Clara stared at him, still trying to process what was happening. She had heard of powerful beings in the universe, but this was something entirely different. A genie, in the middle of a forgotten world. Her heart raced, but her curiosity got the better of her. 3 wishes, she asked cautiously, still unsure if she should believe him. "What kind of wishes?" "Any wish you desire," the genie replied. "We can speak of riches, power, or even immortality. The choice is yours." Clara thought for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. The lure of power, the idea of getting anything she wanted, was tempting. But she had heard stories of wishes gone wrong, of beings who granted wishes with hidden tricks or dangerous consequences. She wasn't foolish enough to rush into such a decision. "I'm not sure," Clara said, her voice thoughtful. "I don't want anything dangerous. I just want to understand. Why me? Why now?" The genie paused, his eyes studying her for a long moment. You, Clara, are unique. The universe has its plans for you, and now our paths have crossed. But you must be careful. Once you make your wish, there is no turning back. You will change, and so will the universe. Clara shivered, the weight of his words settling over her. The Genie was right. Whatever she chose would change everything. Take your time, the Genie said, his tone gentle. When you are ready, I will grant your first wish. Clara stood still, her mind whirling with possibilities. What would she wish for? And more importantly, what would it mean for her and the universe if she made the wrong choice? Clara stood frozen, her mind racing. The Genie's offer felt unreal. She had heard of stories, old legends, about wish-granting beings, but this was no fairy tale. This was real. The power to wish for anything she wanted, anything at all. But there was a weight to it, a pressure she hadn't felt before. The Genie's glowing eyes were still fixed on her, waiting for her decision. His presence was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. He didn't seem like a trickster, but still, Clara had no idea what kind of consequences such a power could bring. What do you mean, change the universe? Clara asked, her voice calm but with an underlying edge of concern. How exactly would my wish affect things? The Genie tilted his head, his smile never wavering. The power I grant can reshape reality itself. Time, space, and all things in between. Your wish will not just affect you, Clara. It will echo through the fabric of the universe. Clara swallowed hard. She had no idea what kind of responsibility that meant. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that, she said, her hands trembling slightly. The Genie chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to reverberate around her. Take your time, of course, but do not forget, time here is fleeting. When you choose, make it count. The universe doesn't often offer such chances. Clara stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the Genie, her mind filled with questions. Should she wish for fame, wealth, or power? She could be anything, go anywhere, accomplish anything. The temptation was strong, but she knew it wasn't that simple. No wish ever was. Finally, after what felt like hours of inner conflict, Clara made her decision. She took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and spoke. I wish, she said, her voice steady, to become the most powerful being in the universe. The Genie's smile widened, his eyes flickering with a strange light. It is done. Clara blinked, expecting to feel something. Anything. But for a moment, nothing happened. The air around her felt normal, the ground under her feet solid. She looked at the Genie, confused. That's it? She asked. Did you grant it? The Genie nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Yes, it is granted. You are now the most powerful being in the universe, but... He paused, his gaze intense. Your power is not the kind you might imagine. Clara frowned, not understanding. She was powerful, wasn't she? She could do anything, reshape the galaxy if she wanted to. But before she could ask more, something strange began to happen. The room around her seemed to warp. The walls shifted, bending like liquid, and Clara's body felt lighter, as if she was no longer fully bound by the physical world. The air hummed with energy, and Clara's heartbeat quickened. And then she understood. It wasn't that she had become a god or a being of pure energy. She had become a part of the very fabric of reality. Her mind, her thoughts, her every action had become significant, almost too significant. Every time she made a decision, no matter how small, it rippled out across the universe, changing things she could barely comprehend. A wrong word could shift the fate of an entire star system. A single thought could alter the course of history. Clara gasped, stumbling backward. What is this? What's happening to me? The Genie's voice came softly, his tone almost pitying. You now influence reality itself. Your power is not in destruction or control, but in creation. Every moment, every thought you have, will create ripples across the universe. You will affect all things, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. You will shape the universe, but you will never fully control it. Clara's heart pounded. She could feel it now. Every decision she made, no matter how trivial, seemed to echo through the cosmos. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift, as if the entire world was bending to her will. She wanted to stop, to undo the wish. But how could she? She had no idea how far her new influence stretched, or how deeply her actions would change everything. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing thoughts, but it was no use. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice full of disbelief and fear. The Genie, seeing her panic, spoke again, his voice now more serious. "You have become a force of nature, Clara. But be warned, power like this is dangerous. You will not just alter the universe, you will feel it. Every shift, every ripple will affect you. It will change you." Clara trembled, her thoughts swirling in 1,000 directions. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't realized the true cost of her wish. And now she wasn't sure if she could undo it. The Genie watched her, his expression unreadable. "Your first wish is granted. And now you must learn to live with it." Clara stared at the floor, trying to make sense of it all. Her mind raced with possibilities, and yet she felt trapped. The power she had gained wasn't the kind of power she had imagined. It was something far greater and far more dangerous. The universe, it seemed, had just become her responsibility. Clara stood still, trying to focus on the Genie's words. Her mind was still reeling from the enormity of what had happened. She had wanted power, yes, but she never imagined it would come with such weight. Her first wish had made her the most powerful being in the universe, but at what cost? The universe was now her responsibility, and every action she took seemed to ripple through the cosmos. The Genie watched her quietly, his glowing eyes fixed on her. His presence was calming, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something she didn't, something she needed to understand. "How do I control this?" Clara asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I can't even begin to understand what's happening. Everything feels so out of control." The Genie stepped forward, his face softening. "Control is not the answer, Clara. Understanding is. You must learn to listen to the universe, to feel its pulse. Every action you take sends ripples through time, space, and reality. But the key to true power is knowing when to act and when to simply be." Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts. It felt impossible. How could she possibly listen to something as vast as the entire universe? It was overwhelming, and the responsibility felt crushing. Yet, a small part of her couldn't deny the truth in his words. She had felt the threads of reality, the way everything was connected. But the idea of controlling such power, of shaping the world with a single thought, felt like a burden she wasn't ready to bear. "What if I make a mistake?" she whispered. "What if I destroy everything by accident?" The Genie gave a small, knowing smile. "Mistakes are part of learning, Clara. But you must learn to live with the consequences. Every decision you make, big or small, will have an impact. That's the nature of your power. The universe is a delicate balance. One wrong step could send it into chaos, but one small act of kindness could heal a wound that's lasted millennia." Clara looked around the room, trying to ground herself. The walls still shimmered with the faint energy of her power, and the air felt thick, heavy. She couldn't feel the world as she used to. Her mind raced with possibilities, and for a moment, she feared that she was already too deep into this power to ever escape it. "But I don't know how to fix it," Clara said, her voice low. "I can't even control what's happening in this room. How can I be trusted with the universe?" The Genie's expression softened further. "Trust doesn't come from perfection, Clara. It comes from knowing that you will try, that you will learn. Your journey is not about control. It's about balance. Power without balance leads to destruction. But power with understanding can heal the world." Clara closed her eyes, trying to breathe deeply, trying to find some clarity amidst the chaos in her mind. She had wanted to change the world, to make it better. But now, with this power, she felt as if the world was changing her. Her mind buzzed with 1,000 thoughts, each one pulling her in a different direction. She wanted to help people, to do something good, but how could she trust herself with something so vast? "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The genie nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "No one is ever truly ready for such power. It takes time. But you have more than enough strength within you, Clara. You are human. And that, more than anything, is what makes you special." Clara blinked at him, surprised. "Human?" she asked, almost laughing. "What does being human have to do with anything? I'm not. I'm not like other humans anymore. I can feel the universe inside me. I'm beyond human now." The genie shook his head. "No, you are still human, and that is what gives you the ability to understand and feel the balance. You have compassion, empathy, and the will to act. You are not a being of pure power. You are a being of choices, and those choices will shake the universe more than anything else." Clara's heart slowed as she took in his words. The idea that her humanity was still intact, that her emotions and decisions mattered in this new vast reality, was comforting. She wasn't just a cosmic force. She was still herself, with the same values, the same hopes, the same fears. She looked at the genie, her resolve hardening. "So what now?" she asked. "How do I start?" The genie smiled, his form glowing brighter for a moment. "Start small, Clara. Begin with one thing at a time. Don't try to change everything all at once. The universe isn't a project to be fixed. It's a living, breathing entity. Respect that. And when the time comes, you will know what to do." Clara nodded slowly. She didn't have all the answers, and the road ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear: she couldn't let fear control her. She had the power to make a difference, and she would start with one step at a time. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now. "I think I understand." The genie gave a slight bow. "You are welcome. Remember, Clara, understanding is the first step, and with understanding comes the true power to change the world." With a deep breath, Clara stepped forward, determined to begin the long journey ahead. The universe may have been vast and complex, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone. And with every choice she made, she would shape its future. Clara stood on the edge of a vast, glowing cliff. The universe spread out before her like a never-ending sea of stars. Her thoughts felt as scattered as the constellations, yet there was a strange calm that settled over her. The genie's words echoed in her mind. Understanding is the first step. She had learned so much already, but so much more remained. As she took a deep breath, Clara focused on the stars. They had always fascinated her. Now she could feel their energy, their pull. She could see their patterns, the way they influenced each other, shifting in the vastness of space. It was beautiful, but it was also overwhelming. Every star was like a thread in the great tapestry of the universe, and she, somehow, was now a part of that fabric. With the power that the genie had granted her, Clara could change things in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. She had already made mistakes, small ripples that she hadn't fully understood. The room she had stood in earlier was still a reminder of the chaos she had inadvertently caused. The walls had shifted, the air had thickened, and she had felt like she was drowning in her own power. But she wasn't ready to give up. The universe was vast, and she had been given the chance to shape it. She just needed to learn how. "I can't keep making mistakes," she muttered to herself, pacing back and forth. "I need to understand. I need to be careful." The genie's soft voice broke through her thoughts. "There is no such thing as a perfect path, Clara. You will stumble, you will fall, but that is part of the journey." Clara looked up, seeing the genie standing nearby, his form glowing faintly. He had always been a figure of calm, of mystery, but there was something different in his eyes now. It was as if he saw something in her, a potential she hadn't fully realized. "How do you know so much about me?" Clara asked, her curiosity bubbling over. "You've been guiding me, but how can you be sure I can do this?" The genie's smile was gentle. "Because you are human, Clara. It is your very nature that makes you special. Humans have the ability to learn, to grow, to make decisions that are not purely based on power, but on compassion. That is why you are different from other beings in the universe. You will find your way, because you have the strength to keep moving forward." Clara absorbed his words, but her thoughts were still clouded with doubt. She was human, yes, but was that really enough? She had been granted power over the universe, yet she still felt like an ordinary person. The weight of it all was suffocating. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the universe stretching out in all directions, waiting for her to act, to decide, to shape it. Clara clenched her fists. She had to start somewhere. "I'll try," she said, more to herself than to the genie. "I'll make a change. But it has to be for the better. I can't keep making mistakes." With a wave of her hand, Clara focused on the nearest star. She could feel its energy, the way it burned brightly in the distance. She focused harder, trying to understand it, trying to hear its pulse, its rhythm. As her concentration deepened, she felt a connection to the star. It wasn't just an object in space. It was part of the universe, and now so was she. Slowly, she began to alter its course, just slightly. A small shift, barely noticeable to the naked eye. But to Clara, it was a step forward, a test. She watched the star flicker, its light dimming for a brief moment before it steadied. Her heart raced. She had done it. She had made a change. But as she exhaled, a strange feeling swept over her. The star's shift had caused a ripple, and she could feel the effects deep within her. It was subtle, but there was a change. The fabric of reality had shifted ever so slightly. It was a small thing, a small victory, but it left Clara with a deep sense of responsibility. "This is just the beginning," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "There's so much to learn." The genie watched her, his expression unreadable. "The universe will not always be kind to your decisions, Clara. But remember this, every ripple you make creates new waves. Be mindful of the changes you bring." Clara nodded, her gaze fixed on the star she had just shifted. The light from it now felt more personal, more connected to her. She was no longer an observer of the universe. She was a part of it. Every change she made, no matter how small, would have an impact. That thought both scared and inspired her. "I'll be careful," she promised, her voice steady. "I won't make the same mistake again." With a deep breath, Clara turned away from the stars, her mind focused on the path ahead. The genie had been right. It wasn't about control, it was about understanding. The universe wasn't something she could force into submission. It was a living, breathing entity that required patience and respect. And she was just beginning to learn how to listen. Clara stood in the center of a vast, empty field, her mind focused on the task ahead. The lessons she had learned so far had taught her the importance of understanding, patience, and balance. But now she was about to face her first real test. The universe had given her power, immense, unimaginable power, but it was up to her to prove she could wield it wisely. She took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze against her skin. It was a quiet moment, but Clara knew it wouldn't last. The genie had warned her that not all her decisions would be easy. Not every choice she made would be one she could undo. A low hum filled the air, and Clara turned her head. A storm cloud had appeared overhead, dark and swirling. It seemed to be moving directly toward her, as if drawn to her presence. The energy around her shifted, and Clara felt the familiar pull of the universe's threads. She could sense the storm's power, raw, untamed, and chaotic. It was as if the storm itself was a test, challenging her to prove her ability to control the power she had been granted. "Focus," Clara muttered to herself. She had come a long way since the day she made her wish, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for something like this. The storm was alive with energy, and it felt almost as if it was aware of her. The genie's voice appeared in her mind, calm and steady. The universe will test you, Clara. It is not enough to simply shape reality. It is your understanding and the way you balance the forces at play that will determine your success. Clara swallowed hard, taking a step forward. She reached out with her mind, feeling the storm's energy. It was chaotic, like a wild beast, thrashing and turning. But Clara was no longer afraid of that power. She had learned how to connect with the universe's flow, how to listen to the whispers of reality. She could feel the storm's rage, but she could also sense its vulnerability. The first step was understanding. Clara closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She focused on the storm, trying to understand its rhythm. Every force, every energy in the universe had a pulse. The storm was no different. She reached out, not to control it, but to understand it. Slowly, the winds calmed as Clara felt the pull of the storm's energy. It was a force of nature, powerful and unpredictable. But it was not evil. It simply was. Clara let her thoughts soften, accepting the storm for what it was, a force of nature, neither good nor bad, just part of the universe. The cloud above her seemed to pause for a moment, as if sensing the change. The wind slowed, the sky cleared slightly, and the storm's fury seemed to lessen. But Clara wasn't finished. The storm's power was still there, waiting, and she knew that she had to find a way to balance it, to find a way to guide it, not force it. Now you must act, the genie's voice reminded her. Clara nodded, opening her eyes. She could feel the storm, the energy surrounding her, but now it was clearer. The storm was like a dance, and she needed to lead it. She raised her hands, her mind focused on the delicate balance she needed to maintain. She could feel the storm's strength, but she knew she had to be gentle. The universe wasn't something that could be tamed with brute force. With a gentle push, Clara shifted the storm. The clouds parted just enough to let the sunlight shine through, casting a warm, golden light over the field. The winds calmed, becoming a light breeze that rustled the grass. The storm wasn't gone, but it was no longer a threat. It was peaceful, balanced. Clara lowered her hands, her chest rising and falling as she breathed out a sigh of relief. She had done it. The storm was no longer a force of chaos. It was simply part of the natural flow of the universe. She had understood it, and in doing so, she had found a way to balance it. For the first time since she had made her wish, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't about power or control. It was about listening, understanding, and acting in harmony with the world around her. The genie appeared beside her, his expression unreadable but approving. "You have passed the first test, Clara," he said. "You have learned that true power is not in force, but in balance. But remember, the universe will continue to test you. This is only the beginning." Clara nodded, a feeling of calm settling over her. She wasn't sure what the next test would be, but she knew she was ready. She had learned that she didn't have to be afraid of the power inside her. She just had to respect it and listen. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. The genie smiled, his form shimmering faintly. "Then the next test is already on its way." Clara turned to face the horizon, the calm winds brushing against her face. Whatever came next, she knew she could handle it. She wasn't just a human anymore. She was something more. And with each test, each challenge, she would grow stronger. The universe was vast, but she was ready to shape it. The stars above Clara flickered, their light soft against the endless dark. She stood in the center of the universe, or at least it felt that way. The feeling of being connected to everything, the stars, the planets, the winds, the very fabric of reality, was overwhelming. But now, it was familiar. It was part of her. But today, Clara could feel something different. The air around her was thick with anticipation. The genie had warned her that the tests were not over. In fact, he had told her that the hardest challenge was still ahead. Clara's mind raced. She had learned so much: how to listen, how to balance, how to understand the universe's pulse. She had faced storms, corrected mistakes, and shaped the flow of time and space. But she wasn't sure if she was ready for what was coming next. Suddenly, the Genie appeared before her, his glowing form shimmering like a beacon in the night. He was silent for a moment, his eyes studying her with the same calm gaze he had always had. "Clara," the Genie said, his voice quiet but firm, "you have learned much, but there is one last lesson you must face. The universe does not just give power, it takes something in return. Power always demands a price." Clara's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What price?" The Genie stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "The power you hold is immense, but it is not infinite. There comes a time when you must choose. Will you use your power to shape the universe in your own image, or will you let it go, trusting the universe to find its own balance?" Clara's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just about controlling storms or guiding stars. This was a choice between holding on to the power she had been given or letting it fade away. The weight of the decision felt unbearable. "What do you mean by let it go?" Clara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I've worked so hard to learn this power. I've tried to help people. I've fixed things. What do I give up?" The Genie's face softened, but his eyes remained steady. "The power you have is not truly yours, Clara. It is a gift, but gifts are not meant to be kept forever. The universe will find a way to keep its balance. You must choose whether to continue with this power, knowing it will change you, or whether you will release it, knowing that the universe will continue, with or without you." Clara stared at him, the weight of his words sinking deep into her. She had always dreamed of changing the world, of making things better, of having the power to fix everything. But she had seen, too, the danger of holding too much power. She had made mistakes, seen the consequences of her actions ripple across time and space. The burden of it all had become harder to carry. Could she truly control something so vast, so complex? "What happens if I let it go?" Clara asked softly. "The universe will find its own path," the Genie replied. "The threads of reality will return to their natural flow. Things will change, but they will find balance again. You will no longer be the one to shape its course." Clara's mind spun. She had the power to change the course of history, but at what cost? She had felt the weight of the decisions she made, the constant pull to be both careful and bold. But could she continue to carry this burden? Or was it time to let the universe find its own way? She looked at the stars again, the endless sea of lights that had always felt so distant, so unreachable. But now, they were part of her. She could feel their energy, their rhythm. And she knew, deep down, that no matter what she decided, the universe would be okay. Clara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The decision was hers alone. She had been given the gift of power, but the question was whether to hold on to it or let it go. With the weight of the universe pressing against her heart, she made her choice. "I'll let it go," she said quietly, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. "The universe doesn't need me to control it. It will find its balance without me." The Genie smiled, a proud and gentle smile. "You have made a wise choice, Clara. Power is not meant to be owned forever. It is meant to be understood, respected, and sometimes released." As Clara spoke the final words, the power she had held began to fade, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. She felt the universe slip away from her grasp, the threads of reality returning to their natural flow. The storm clouds, the stars, the energy that had once pulsed within her, everything returned to its rightful place. And for the first time, Clara felt truly at peace. She had made the right decision. The universe didn't need one person to shape it. It was alive, changing, and beautiful just as it was. The Genie bowed, his form beginning to fade into the light. "You have done well, Clara. You have learned the true meaning of power. It is in knowing when to hold on and when to let go." Clara smiled, watching as the Genie vanished completely. The universe stretched out before her, vast and endless. But now, it was no longer something she had to control. It was something she could simply appreciate. And as she looked up at the stars one last time, Clara knew one thing for sure. She was ready to live her life, no longer burdened by the weight of the universe, but free to experience it as it was meant to be. Clara's head throbbed. It felt like the entire universe was swirling inside her mind, pressing against her thoughts. Every movement, every whisper of her will seem to stretch the fabric of reality. Her body was heavy, like gravity itself had intensified, but it was also light, as if she were floating in a dream. The strange sensations were overwhelming. She staggered forward, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The Genie's words echoed in her ears. You will affect all things, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. She had thought it was a metaphor, but now she felt it. A deep, unsettling awareness that every action she took, every thought she had, held consequences far beyond her comprehension. Clara looked down at her hands, as if they had somehow changed. But they were the same as they had always been, human, ordinary. Yet she could feel something different about them. There was a power beneath her skin, an energy she didn't fully understand. She flexed her fingers, and the air around her shimmered. For a brief moment, she swore she saw the entire room ripple like water disturbed by a stone. Okay, she muttered to herself, trying to calm down. Think, just think. I can control this. She focused on the ground beneath her feet, willing it to remain steady. But as soon as she concentrated on one small part of reality, everything else shifted. The walls around her trembled, the stones groaning under an invisible weight. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She had willed the ground to stay still, but it was as though the entire universe was reacting to her desire. Not just the room, but everything. Suddenly, her surroundings seemed to stretch and pull, like an invisible force was twisting everything into new shapes. Clara gasped and stepped back, her mind racing. She had never felt so out of control. The power that had seemed so alluring now felt like a trap. She could sense the ripples of change, small at first, but growing larger with every passing second. What did I do? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean to. Her heart pounded in her chest as the air around her grew dense. The sky outside the ruined building had darkened, though there was no storm in sight. A distant star, once bright, seemed to flicker as though it was about to vanish. Clara's mind raced, panic setting in. She felt responsible for it all. The Genie's words kept echoing in her head, growing louder with each passing moment. You will affect all things. Her breath caught in her throat as she tried to focus, tried to steady herself. But her mind kept wandering, flitting from one thought to the next, each one a potential disaster. What if she accidentally destroyed an entire planet? What if her will destroy the universe itself? She didn't even know how to control the power she had so casually wished for. The Genie's calm voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Do not panic, Clara. This power is not a curse, though it may feel like one. Clara turned, looking at the Genie with desperation in her eyes. How can you say that? I'm ruining everything. He raised a hand, and the chaos in the room stopped, as if frozen in time. The walls stopped shifting. The ground steadied. The air, thick with tension, cleared. Relax, the Genie said, his tone soft but firm. You are not alone in this, but you must understand. This power is not something you can control by force. It is woven into the very essence of the universe, and you, Clara, are now a part of it. Clara blinked, trying to calm her racing heart. What does that mean? What do I do? You are part of the universe now, the Genie repeated, his voice calm, almost soothing. The universe is not something separate from you anymore. You influence it by existing. Every thought, every word, every desire, it becomes reality. But you must be careful. The balance of everything you touch is delicate. It can change in an instant. Clara took a shaky breath, her hands trembling. She didn't understand what he meant by balance, but she could feel it. Something inside her was off. She could sense the connections between all things, like invisible threads stretching from one corner of the universe to the other. And with each thread, she felt its pull, its weight. "But I can't control it," Clara said, almost pleading. "I don't know how." The genie stepped forward, his glowing eyes locking with hers. "No one ever truly controls the universe, Clara. Not even me. The key is to listen to it. You must learn to understand the flow of reality. You are now part of that flow. Every thought you have, every choice you make, will influence the world around you. You must be aware of this." Clara nodded slowly, her mind still reeling from the enormity of what had happened. She could feel the weight of the universe on her shoulders. She was no longer just a human. She was something more, the living force that affected reality itself. But she didn't know if she was ready for this, and even more terrifying was the thought that she might never truly understand it. The universe was vast, and her mind felt small, fragile in comparison. "I'm not sure I can do this," Clara whispered. "You can," the genie said with quiet confidence. "But first, you must learn that true power comes not from control, but from understanding. And you have much to learn." As Clara looked around the room, she knew one thing for certain. Her life, as she had known it, was over. She wasn't just an explorer anymore. She was something far more dangerous and far more important. And the universe was waiting for her to decide what came next.